Choosing the wrong place to stay near Yosemite can add hours of driving to your trip. And that's the problem. On a map, a hotel might look close to the park, but Yosemite is massive. The entrances are far apart, the roads are slow, and the place you book can completely change your first visit. So in this video, I'll break down the best areas to stay near Yosemite for first-time visitors. We'll look at Yosemite Valley, El Portal, Mariposa, Oakhurst, Groveland, and the eastern side near Lee Vining. I'll also include rough drive times to Yosemite Valley, because that's usually the part of the park most first-timers want to reach first. Let's start with the most obvious choice, staying inside Yosemite National Park. If this is your first Yosemite trip and you can find a place inside the park that fits your budget, this is the easiest option. If you stay in Yosemite Valley, you might be just minutes from Yosemite Falls, Curry Village, the Valley Shuttle, and the trailheads near Happy Isles. In summer, parking can become stressful early in the day. Staying inside the park gives you a better chance of seeing the valley before the biggest crowds arrive. You can start early, take a break later, and come back out around sunset without a long drive. But not all in-park lodging is equally close. Yosemite Valley Lodge, Curry Village, and the Ahwahnee are the most convenient for the classic valley experience. Wawona is also inside the park, but it can still be around 45 minutes to more than an hour from Yosemite Valley. The main problems are price and availability. Lodging inside the park can book out far in advance, especially for summer, holiday weekends, and fall weekends. So check inside the park first, but don't build your whole plan around it unless you're booking early. Now, if the park is sold out or too expensive, the next area I'd look at is El Portal. El Portal is not the cutest town near Yosemite. You're not choosing it for a charming downtown or a long list of restaurants, you're choosing it for location. It sits just outside the Arch Rock entrance, one of the most convenient ways to reach Yosemite Valley. In good conditions, El Portal is usually about 25 to 35 minutes from the valley. This is especially helpful if your itinerary is centered on Yosemite Falls, Bridal Veil Fall, Tunnel View, El Capitan Meadow, Glacier Point if the road is open, and the Mist Trail if you're hiking toward Vernal Fall. The downside is that it can feel limited. Food choices are fewer than in a larger town, and you might not get that vacation town feeling at night. If you're spending most of the day inside the park anyway, El Portal does the job extremely well. I'd choose it if saving drive time matters more than restaurants or town atmosphere. Now, let's talk about Mariposa and Midpines. This is where the decision gets more balanced. Mariposa is farther from Yosemite Valley than El Portal, but it gives you more of a real town. You'll find more restaurants, shops, gas stations, and places to stay. That can make the trip feel easier, especially with kids, or if you don't want every meal to feel like a planning project. Drive time is the trade-off. Midpines can be around 45 to 60 minutes from Yosemite Valley. Mariposa is usually closer to 60 to 75 minutes, and in busy periods, it can take longer. This area is often a smart choice for people who want better value. Yosemite rarely feels cheap, but compared with staying inside the park or right at the entrance, Mariposa can give you more options. If you want the closest practical base outside the park, choose El Portal. If you want a better mix of location, food, lodging variety, and price, Mariposa starts to make more sense. Just remember, Mariposa can look close enough on a map, but you still need to account for mountain roads, entrance traffic, and parking once you arrive. So, Mariposa and Midpines are probably the best overall compromise for many first-time visitors. Practical, flexible, and easier for families. Next up, Oakhurst and Fish Camp. This is where some Yosemite visitors make a planning mistake. Oakhurst has lots of lodging, restaurants, grocery options, and services. But it's on the southern side of the park, which means it works best for a specific kind of Yosemite trip. Oakhurst is usually around 1 hour and 20 minutes to 1 hour and 40 minutes from Yosemite Valley. Fish Camp is closer to the south entrance, but it can still take around 1 hour to 1 hour and 20 minutes to reach the valley. If you want to visit Mariposa Grove, see the giant sequoias, explore Wawona, or enter through the south entrance, this area can make a lot of sense. Fish Camp can be a good choice if you want a quieter mountain stay near that southern gateway. But if your dream trip is mostly Yosemite Valley, Oakhurst is not my first pick. You can absolutely visit the valley from there, but if you plan to drive that route every single day, the extra time starts to wear on you, especially with kids. It's possible, but it may not feel relaxing. So I wouldn't say avoid Oakhurst. I'd say understand what kind of trip it creates. Choose it if Mariposa Grove is a priority, if you want more services, or if you find a strong lodging deal. Now, let's move to Groveland and Buck Meadows. This area sits along Highway 120 west of Yosemite. It's often useful for people coming from San Francisco, the Bay Area, or Northern California. Groveland can be roughly 1 hour and 30 minutes from Yosemite Valley, sometimes more. Buck Meadows is closer, often around 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes, depending on where you stay. Groveland can be a nice base if you're entering through Big Oak Flat Road, and it may work well for a shorter weekend trip when your route already brings you that way. It also gives you access to parts of Yosemite that some first-timers skip, like Hetch Hetchy on the northwest side. But for a first trip, I'd be careful. Groveland can be convenient for the drive-in, but it's not automatically the best base for every Yosemite itinerary. That's the theme of this whole video. Don't just ask, how far is this hotel from Yosemite? Ask, how far is it from the part of Yosemite I actually want to visit? Groveland is a good option if you're coming from the Bay Area, using Highway 120, or want a quieter western approach. But for the easiest first-time Yosemite experience, I'd still check the Valley, El Portal, and Mariposa first. Now we need to talk about the eastern side. Lee Vining, June Lake, and Mammoth Lakes. This area can be amazing, but it can also be completely wrong for a first Yosemite trip. Lee Vining sits near the eastern entrance to Yosemite, close to Tioga Pass. In summer, this gives you access to Tuolumne Meadows, Tenaya Lake, Olmsted Point, the High Country, and Mono Lake. But Lee Vining is usually about 2 hours or more from Yosemite Valley, and that only works when Tioga Road is open. Mammoth Lakes is farther away, often closer to 2.5 to 3 hours from the valley. That's why this area is not a normal Yosemite Valley base. If your trip is built around the High Country, Lee Vining can be excellent. But if your goal is Yosemite Valley, this is not the base I'd choose. The drive across Tioga Road is beautiful, but it's long, slow, and seasonal. In winter and spring, the road is usually closed. Choose Lee Vining or Mammoth Lakes for a summer high country itinerary. Do not choose it as your main base if this is your first Yosemite trip and your priority is Yosemite Valley. So, here's the quick version. If you want the best overall location, stay inside Yosemite. If that's sold out, choose El Portal, which is usually about 25 to 35 minutes from Yosemite Valley. If you want a real town with more food and better value, choose Mariposa or Midpines. Expect roughly 45 to 75 minutes, depending on the exact place you book. If you care about Mariposa Grove, Wawona, or the South Entrance, look at Fish Camp or Oakhurst. Just know that Yosemite Valley may still be around 1 hour to 1 hour and 40 minutes away. If you're driving from the Bay Area and using Highway 120, check Groveland or Buck Meadows. Expect roughly 1 hour to 1 hour and 30 minutes to the valley. And if your trip is about Tioga Road, Tuolumne Meadows, Mono Lake, or the Eastern Sierra, look at Lee Vining. For Yosemite Valley, though, it's usually 2 hours or more, and the road has to be open. Before you book, remember this. Near Yosemite can mean very different things. Don't assume every entrance is equal, don't plan a slow morning from a faraway town, and always check seasonal road closures before you go. If you've been to Yosemite before, share your best tip in the comments. Where did you stay? How was the drive? And would you choose that area again? And if you're planning a bigger Northern California trip, don't stop at Yosemite. Watch my video on 20 amazing things to do in Northern California you need to add to your bucket list next.